Hey everyone, it's Docfire. It's time for the Docfire fire piston install and kind of general overview of the two options in pistons. And as you can see down here, I have a whole bunch of regulators, and these are the regulators that I confirmed that they work in. Actually, there's a few more. We'll go over that. And then we're going to do an install of the wargame style piston. It'll be the same for generally for both pistons and kind of the tools that are needed. So there are two pistons. There's the red piston and then there's the blue piston. The red piston is really only works with the Inception Designs style regulators. I have another one here. This is a version 1 and this is the version 3. And there may be even a higher version. I know they does some minor changes, but really it's kind of, I think he changes versions when he does little modifications. Version 1, what I know the differences are that they're identical to version 2, except this is broached for an Allen key. You can see it right here if you get in the light. So it's easy to remove this cap for service. And then version 2 had the broaching in it. And I don't know if he did any other changes on the inside. I think they were all consistently the same with that. Version 3 is where there was a big depart from version 1 in looks. Obviously the sides are scalloped in. It's broached on that. He changed some of the, he changed the O-rings to a higher quality O-ring, and the reg seat is generally white in color, and it's a pretty good reg seat. I've not tested the red piston with the new reg seat. It should work perfectly fine. I just haven't tested it yet. There probably isn't a need to replace that reg seat in the Inceptions on the version 3s. And I think he did, and he did some spring changes in later versions of the version 3. He was having some bevel disc issues from my understanding. So I'm going to be able to talk more about that on his product. But nevertheless, the red piston will work in all 3 versions of the Inception regulator. Okay. The blue piston, well, here, let's show you this is the red one right here, and I have it in this bag. This is how you'll see it as packaged. And so this is the red piston. The blue piston, let me take that out of here. I'll take these. Come on, get out of there. Don't want to lose all these discs. There we go. The blue piston, and I just have the I have the O-rings. I'm including these 2 O-rings on there. Super high quality. We'll talk about O-rings in a second. Blue piston looks identical, it's just a little shorter. Okay, so for reference points, the Resurrection regulators are pretty much a copy outside of piston length as a war games internally for the most part, and more of a copy of the later versions of war games, like what came under carnivores that had the degasser. They've updated with a swivel bottom and some other features that are make it nice to have features. Okay, so let's put that over here. Now let's kind of go down the line here. Organize these. So even put one of these in here, Black Magic. So we have kind of the original War Games piston. Blue ones will work with it. The blue piston, no problem. We have the later Ergo style, and this is it's a small hole. This is an older Ergo. This is one we're going to do the rebuild on, and it will work with this. At least we'll find out. It should. This is the Black Magic, getting close to the Carnivore era piston, and it'll work with these. It'll work with the Carnivore pistons. It'll work with all of the War Games regulators. It will work with. So let's pull these guys off to the side. This is one we're going to work on, and then we go to the Empire Resurrection and Empire Sniper models. They both had a variation. They both had the same regulator essentially. And the blue piston works with these. And if you look at these are very similar to Simon's in the sense of how the collar is. The collar is almost identical collar, at least on the version 1s. And then Simon later, I think he made it so the fitting would go up a little bit further in there. On the version 3s, I think the fitting, no, the collar is still the same. Just uses a different fitting on the Pro fittings. These guys, and we're going to talk more when we do the install. We're going to talk more about these guys. We'll set that off to the side. And then finally, MacDev Gladiator. I call it the Gladiator 2. I don't know what Gladiator this is. It's the one that has a little jewel right here and the adjusters on the bottom, and the input port is offset. They have another Gladiator, the older one, which I do make a reg rebuild kit for that. That fixes that nylon reg seat to puts a more traditional reg in there. Works really good. Available at docfirepaintball.com. So it will work on these guys too, and I'll quickly show you this. We have a blue piston in here right now, and it works perfectly fine with these MacDev. And so kind of go through, if you're going through things, if it's a Resurrection, you're going to use, your kit comes with 8 Belleville discs, USA made, stainless steel, high quality Belleville discs, Belleville springs. I want high quality on these. That's really important. I recommend on the version 1 and 2 of the Inception Reg, replace these. On the version 3, it's your choice, but I do recommend replacing them. And save your old springs, put them in a Ziploc baggie or whatever. Save them, label them so you know with your piston. The parts aren't bad. If they were working before, it just gives you a spare just in case. With the Wargame products, they use 7 Belleville springs, disc springs, and you can use 8 if you want. You can try different configurations, but they use 7 in here. So just note that you'll have an extra Belleville disc, but you're going to get 8 no matter what. I'm not going to split out kits to have 7. Doesn't make any sense. The MacDev uses 8. I can't verify the quality of the springs on the MacDev. I think they're the same as these, but you could try both. But I recommend just replacing them, because I know that's what I did in this and they work fine. So we'll set the MacDev off to the side. The Resurrection, and this one gets interesting, and we'll talk about this one a little bit more when we get into it. And so I'll put this one off to the side, right over here, and I'm going to set these guys right over here. So anyway, the Resurrection, obviously the blue disc. You can see that, if you can see in here, there's one in here, on here. And then with these, they do have 8, we'll talk about it right now, they do have 8 Belleville washers on the short piston, and our Belleville spring disc, or disc springs. And you want to use 8, but you have some options on the orientation. The Belleville discs that come in here are generally, let me zoom in here, are generally these ones that have this very bronzy color to them. These are junk. And you can take these out and literally throw them in the garbage can. These are really bad springs. I've had nothing but bad luck with these. And they get inconsistent velocities. It's just, they're a poor spring. You can save them if you want, but label them Resurrection springs. Likewise, I think Inception Designs use the same springs in their Gen 1 and Gen 2. I don't recommend using those. They're a Chinese variant of that. So in the Resurrections, just because of how they machine the lower half, and this, I haven't tested it on the Inceptions, it may be the same with the Inceptions, is that you can use 8 Belleville discs that are all opposing each other, and you'll have in your thing you'll have different options here, and I'll show resurrection and it's res, and it shows 8 bevel discs all opposing each other, and then it shows 8 bevel discs, one cupped, one nested together with another one. So and all that does is shorten the spring stack just a little bit, and that allows you to go to a lower PSI in that. It should allow you to run between 0 and like 300, with 200 range being your really nice middle of the range, and then the other way around, it gets you down to about 200 at the low end, and kind of up on the higher end. You can run 7. I don't recommend it, but test around with it. Just be careful not to damage anything, or you'll be find another piston at least. And I will sell, if you damage a piston and you send it to me, I will sell you just a piston. We'll come up with a pricing structure on that if you damage it. But anyway, so just keep note on that. That kind of has some little things here, and I'm going to probably do some more videos on this showing the different spring configurations and pressures. With the resurrection is really the big one, probably the inception. So set that off to the side. We're going to need that. The instructions. So let's go through what tools do you need. And so let me grab right here. Piece of macro line. Forgot to, yeah, that will work. So you just need a piece of macro line. You take the one that's on your gun off and use it as a tool. So you need that. I have a bamboo skewer here that I kind of broke off the pointy end. You can use this, some sort of a rag, to clean all the oil off of the rag when you take it apart, because I recommend that you do a full rebuild on this. You're going to need a nice set of Allen keys. I'm using the Bondus right here. If you do a full rebuild, you're probably going to want a flathead screwdriver. We'll go through that. I have another pusher tool here. I'll show you that. Snap ring pliers with some of the markers, like the resurrection regulators and the war games. You'll need snap ring pliers if the snap ring is still down there. And you'll need some lube, and we have some Dow 33 light here. And let's see. I highly recommend getting the O-rings for a rebuild kit and a new reg seat. It's too hard to build these kits out with all the different reg seats for each one of them. Where like one's a flat and one's got a hole. One's like this will use just a standard urethane reg seat with a no hole. The Resurrections and later Carnivore ones and later Black Magic ones, if your reg seat has a hole, it's the degassing hole. And although you can use a regular disc one with that without a hole, you can use a holeless one. It's fine. You just won't have the degassing safety feature. I recommend doing that. We sell them at Docfire Paintball. I would recommend getting those with your order. I'm probably going to come out with some O-ring kits. If not, it's pretty simple. They're pretty simple O-rings. But let's put this off. You're going to have, for war games, this is, I think, a number 16 or 17. I can't remember. It's the one that goes on the cap. A 90 durometer, number 15. I recommend 90 on that. A number 11. And I'll kind of go through my O-rings, why they're colored. And this is a number 10 for the air fitting in here. I always recommend changing the air fitting O-ring when you can, when you're at it. So might as well do it while you're doing a full rebuild. And then the piston comes with the number 8 and the number 113. It automatically comes with that, because if you just did these are probably the most critical O-rings. The other ones you can get away with, and they're easy to service after it's off the aftermarket. Like the one that seals here, as long as it's sealing, you don't really need to replace it. This one is a number 15, either tank O-ring. You can use a 70 durometer if you want. It doesn't really matter on that. And then if your fitting's fine, it's fine. Probably the only critical one is the number 11 that goes on the piston in here, and we'll talk about that if you need it or not. If your reg has not been rebuilt, it's a War Games regulator, most likely it's going to need it. If it's a early version of an Inception, Gen 1 or Gen 2, replace all the O-rings. If it's a Resurrection, replace all the O-rings. Just recommend that. And you know, simple thing, you can buy O-rings from myself, you can get them from Autocockerparts.com and some of the other vendors out there. You can go right to the O-ring source if you know the sizes and buy a small handful. I use the O-ring store as my supplier, so if you see these colors, and we'll talk about that, I use some different compounds, and I'll tell you about that when we get into this. But with that, let's kind of go through this kit. Obviously you have the instruction sheet, the piston with 2 O-rings on it, and we're going to should have 8 Belleville discs. 2, 4, 6, 8. Now we're only going to use 7 in here, so we'll have 1 extra, okay, which is fine. And then we have this little black thing, and if you don't see this little black thing, check to see if it fell into here, or if it's still in your bag, and we'll talk about that in a second. It's this little black cap. I'm going to give you something to make your life a little easier. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to start taking this reg apart, and I get my snap ring pliers. I'm going to go on the bottom, and I'm going to take this little snap ring off and try not to have it fly across the room if I can. There we go. And you can just leave that on the snap ring. This is perfect. It's a dirty rag. You're going to grab your next thing, get your Allen keys, get your 1/4 inch Allen, I think it is. You're going to take this adjuster off. Ooh, wow, this one it's got a lot of dirt in this guy. So I'm actually going to get my rag and I'm going to clean this off. This had a lot of dirt. I don't think this rag's ever been rebuilt. Make a little mess there. A lot of dirt in here. I know I didn't, which is good. I'm glad I didn't rebuild this rag. We've got a dirty rag, or a dirty thing. And I didn't realize how dirty this was, so clean this out. That's interesting. This is definitely an older style War Games regulator. I haven't seen one like this. This adjuster is the right adjuster, but it has a shoulder here. Yours may not like. Yours may look something like. Let me grab one here. Right here. Traditionally is found in them is one that looks like this. Flat top like this compared to this guy. So that's interesting. I'll put this off to the side. What you find in Gen 1 and 2 inception regulators and resurrection regulators are the real. This is a set screw. Is this set screw? And if I remember, I'll put the size up on the screen somewhere. You'll find these ones are actually a set screw. I don't like these. The Gen 3s finally changed from this and went to the flat top like this. I think this is a better. It's a square surface, and it's what pushes up against your adjuster. But they both work. Okay, so I replace all my cup ones with these flat ones. I buy them off McMaster-Carr. I'll put a part number up there for what size it is on there. But with that, let's go into this. This dirt out of here. Lots of dirt. And you're going to need a pick. We're going to pick out these O-rings. And I like to take that off and set that aside. Wipe it off. Pick one off, put the new one on. That's kind of what I recommend. This rag's got a little dent in the top. Just too bad. Next thing you do is you want to take off this top, and you can go and do it the way of the pliers. These are knip-tip pliers. You don't have to use these. Another way of doing it is getting a couple Allen keys, and you put them into the top. Try to get 2 that will slide in snugly. Get 2 in there, and then we're gonna put a bind on them Now I'm going to put a bind on it, and it's putting an inside load, and I can unscrew the top of this rig. If not, if you've bought those fancy pliers that allow you to clamp onto the threads, or these Tippmann pliers, you can. They don't have any teeth on here, and if you want to, you can grab onto here. You may damage it. You know, even on the inside, you can damage it a little bit by the double Allen key technique. But we're going to take the cap off, and I'm going to take this O-ring here. This is a brown O-ring. If your O-ring's fine and it's sealing fine, you don't have to replace this. I recommend that you do. If you're already into the regulator this far, why not just replace every O-ring? Unless you know you just changed out. I like to clean the inside and wipe everything down. Just get it nice and clean. Better to work on a clean object. Okay, we're going to put our O-ring on there. Slide that in place. Set that off to the side. We've got the body here. I'm going to take my flathead screwdriver. I'm going to go underneath this little collar and do a quick little snap. And just twist it, and that should pop off. This will be your number 10 in here. Get that out. Put that aside. And get a Q-tip. I like running a Q-tip in here real quick. And this is just a good way to do this. If you want all the O-ring sizes, remember I'll put them up here on the screen. There's an excellent video that Tim Burpo does on regulator rebuilds. He has every size that you need. I'm going to put this one, it's a number 10 O-ring. I'm going to stuff it down in there. Oops, did it get cockeyed in there? It did a little bit. There it goes. Use a macro link to kind of stuff it down in there. And then clean this off and just push it back on. And that's rebuilt. Alright, so we have that off. And now, let's put these little Belleville discs off to the side. Let's stuff kind of clean off that right there. Put some tools away. We got this little guy right here. This is that little rubber thing. I'm going to put it on the end of a Allen key. It's just an 1/8 inch Allen key. I just put it on my hex driver. Just set that off to the side. We're going to tap the bottom. There it goes. We got out some of the parts. And now I want to start pushing this piston. Sometimes I can tap it on something soft like that and the piston will move itself. But you never want to go and take a metal object and push on the end of the piston. The brass one, a lot of people will use Allen keys. Do not do this. You want to damage your piston and you want to make it your refresh rate really slow and garbage. I gave you a little tool, a little rubber tip. And all you need to do is just get the piston moving. There, I got it moving, and actually I was able to push it all the way through. Able to push the piston out, and then it kept the little rubber piece in there. Where'd it go? It's right there. There it is. Set that off to the side. We got the piston out here, and in this case, in the war games, you'll see that the first Belleville disc is cupped towards the piston, bottom of the piston, and all the rest are in reverse order. They're all not nested. They're all cupped like this. Okay, and you have a total of 7. And in this case, I'm going to replace these. I'm going to take these off. Actually, this whole piston assembly, I can just set off to the side because I don't need it anymore. Okay, so we got that out, and we still have down inside. You may have your urethane number 8 O-ring, and if it's urethane, and there it is right there. It's probably all gooey, and hopefully it hasn't solidified. This one's kind of smashed and was still working, but probably not that good. It's really soft. That we can throw away. And then we're going to get our Q-tip and we're going to run it down in this hole on the bottom side. We're going to clean out any garbage we can. get all these threads out because they had a lot of garbage in there. We're going to do that all nice and cleaned out. And then we're going to get our rag. We're going to go down to the front here. And we want to clean out the rest of the rag. And this procedure is pretty much virtually the same for the Resurrection and the Empire. Really the only difference is that you have this swivel on the bottom, and both the Resurrection and the Empire have some sort of a swivel, have the swivel that has the same O-ring that's in the top. There's two more in here, and I think they're 16s. I'll put something up on the screen. And then I think the Empire has an O-ring cut here as a friction O-ring to keep this cap from coming loose. The Empires do not have the C-clip, or not the Empires, the Inception Designs do not have the C-clip. The Empires do. This one's missing the C-clip in it. But those are two other O-rings on the swivel that you'll want to replace. Just for shits and giggles. But everything else is generally the same. The top unscrews. You want to make sure you get that. The other thing you want to look at is you spin your, I'm going to zoom in here, and there's going to be a bleed hole. You see it right here on the side of the body. You want to make sure that's clear. So take your pick and just run it in there. Clean out any dirt that's come in there. Every rag's going to have it. Here's one. There's that one. Inception. We spin it around. There it is right there. That's to keep the rag from hydrolocking. Essentially, is the area where the springs are is sealed off from the high pressure and sealed off from the regulated pressure. It's supposed to be at atmospheric pressure, so it doesn't create an air spring in there. Okay, so the body's ready to go. You have your little top hat here. You just want to make sure if there's any residue of the urethane. If the urethane really rotted, just clean that off. You use a little Brillo pad or something like that to clean it off. You should have a little spring here. Sometimes these get kind of crushed down. You may need to, sometimes you can straighten them a little bit. If you need another one, I think AutocockerParts.com sells these. Or you can measure the spring out. All this does is just hold the top hat in place, which pushes that that number 8 O-ring in place, and it basically creates a sandwich for that number 8 O-ring. Okay, so it just, all that spring does is just keep that number 8 O-ring in place. So this spring looks okay. We have the rag seat, brass rag seat, and these are all the same. The only difference between these is, and this urethane O-ring is pretty much shot. It's getting sticky. Is you'll see this one's like the same diameter all the way across. The later ones with Inception and Resurrections will be like kind of neck down a little bit here, and there'll be a hole. And they'll have when you pull the rag seat off, be really careful not to lose the little parts in there. There is an orientation for those. It should have a little metal cup in there. The cup should face up with the spring underneath it, and then you push your rag seat down on that. So we're going to zoom in real quick, and we're going to talk about rag seats. This rag seat is still working. It's starting to get deteriorated. You can see the indentation where the rag was pushing down on that, or the piston was pushing down. It's pretty consistent all the way around, so this was probably working halfway decent. But this urethane is starting to age out, and starting to get crushed and look nasty. And that could be from, you know, actually being probably heat cycled in someone's garage for years and stuff like that. So, but we're going to go and we're going to put this number 11 brown O-ring. It doesn't come in the kit, but I do recommend if you have a number 11 O-ring, you can use Buna, you can use whatever. You don't have to use urethane on this. I use, these guys right here are a harder durometer. This is 75, this is 75. And these are Viaton O-rings. And Viton O-rings are really, really good with petroleum products. They're basically a Buna, which works well with petroleum products. Some petroleum products are not so good. And then you have like urethane, which urethane is a really good dynamic O-ring. Works well with CO2 gases and stuff like that. And it has its place. But sometimes, certain types of lubricants, they don't like that much. But for the most part, if it's a paintball lubricant, you're pretty good. If you're using Dow 33, you're pretty safe. This is a silicon-based lubricant. These are Viton, which is a brand name of material. And they're a little bit harder. These two O-rings should last the lifetime of your regulator. I think when you get these, you shouldn't need to replace them. They're not just your standard colored O-ring that you see out there. These are colored because they're a different material style, and they make green and brown. So, but anyway, the other thing we're going to do. So one of the key things of why does let's kind of talk a little bit about why my rag piston is different than the factory rag piston. And I get the factory rag piston here. This off to the side. And you'll see that the War Games use a green. I think this is the same. I think they use Viacom too, to tell you the truth. And these piston O-rings, these green ones, last a long time. They generally don't need to be replaced, but once you're in there, just do it. Just do it. If you look at, they're both exactly the same height. They're the same diameter. But this is brass, this is aluminum, much lighter. Does it increase speed of the piston? I don't know. And we could debate that all day long. I don't think that is as critical. But you got to remember that people say, well, aluminum isn't as good as the brass. Brass has nice lubricity. It's really smooth. It's forgiving. If you do damage this end by using a tool on it, you can touch it off on a lathe. If you have a lathe, you can kind of clean it up. But brass is soft and is damageable either. Anodized aluminum is got a Rockwell hardness. Can you still damage this end with a metal tool? Yeah. Can you still touch it off on the lathe? You sure can. It's going to be seated against a piece of soft urethane. What happens is when the urethane's so bad that it finally goes bad, and this piston goes all the way down and smashes all the way to the bottom and hits something, hits the brass, it damages the end of this, dings it. And the key thing with a piston is you want the piston to run square in the tube, concentric, I guess, and you want this face to go right against this flat urethane disc. You want them to meet up perfectly. If they meet up at an angle like this, then you're going to see reg creep. You're going to see this push in. The reg's going to regulate to a certain point, and you're going to see as the pressure increases, as it pushes it harder and harder down to where it finally seals it off. That's that little creep you see in the needle where you cycle the regulator, the pressure goes down, it comes up, and then creeps a little bit more. That creeping is this seal. That seal is not working. It requires extra pressure, so more air to go up here and more pressure to push down on that spring stack to seal this piston against the reg seat. And if your reg seat's bad, or if it's not square, and this one is actually really probably not square, probably didn't work that well. Or if you have a nick in the bottom of your reg seat, this should be nice and clean. Shouldn't have any nicks in it. If you do nick it, you can't touch this off. You're going to take the anodizing off. You're going to make the piston a little bit shorter, so it's going to perform a little bit different. Not the end of the world. You just want to just skim it just to get that nick off if that's the case. It's still going to something soft. It still should survive. Just don't use any metal tools. Pretty simple. Okay. So what's the difference between these two pistons? Well, if you can see, if we zoom in, the inside hole, much larger. We flip it over, it's even larger on the back. So this piston expands out. So the distance of this inside hole is only that long. The distance of this hole is this full inch, just over an inch. And the idea is this. Let me zoom out here. If you have a straw, right, and you start blowing through the straw, and someone comes up and they cut off a little bit of the straw, it's going to be easier for you to exhaust your lungs. It's going to take less effort because the straw is now shorter. It's the same inside diameter. If you increase the straw, if you have this straw in your mouth and then you put a larger straw that's the same length, it's hence going to be easier. It's friction. It's air is a fluid, and as a fluid travels through an object, it has friction within that object. So the goal in my piston was kind of looking at different designs of, hey, why does the Sidewinder work so well? Well, it's aluminum piston. That's definitely the material I don't think has a bearing on this, but it is aluminum piston, but it's neck down. It has a larger opening because the aluminum is a little bit harder when it's anodized, and they can make this hole bigger right here. So it's a larger hole that's now shorter, so it's gonna allow this piston to flow better. So if you have, so for instance, between these two pistons, the blue one's going to flow better than the red one. They are identical except in the length of the straw. And it's going to flow, the blue one's going to flow a little bit better than the red one. So what does that equate to in your autococker? And I do these for autocockers, and I can't guarantee how it's going to work in other guns. But what that does is, if your gun, let's just take a Shock Tech gun. The reg set at 300 psi out of the factory, and that gun shoots X velocity with that reg set at 300 psi. If I unscrew that reg and I screw on a different brand reg that's set at 300 psi, your velocity may go up or it may go down. Okay, so the reasoning is it's how well that reg can flow, because when you fire the gun, there is a demand put on the system to fire the ball, to say we're going to take this static chamber of air and we're going to make it dynamic. So it's static when the gun's at rest, everything's sitting, the piston and the regulator's closed, the valve and the gun's closed, and it's at ready. The hammer comes, opens the valve, it puts a demand on the system, makes it dynamic, and that demand goes down the chain. It goes all the way to the regulator and says, hey, look, pressure is lowering, you need to open up a little bit to fill, try to equalize, because that's what it's always trying to do. It's always trying to equalize itself. Well, if in an autococker there isn't necessarily enough volume on lower volume gun or lower pressure guns need a little higher volume. And this is where kind of my theory comes into it. But when the valve opens, everything in line is going to start opening. That even your tank valve is going to feed this regulator. It's going to say, oh, I see a demand. This goes, oh, I see it. So it starts off with the valve in the autococker valve opens up, and the demand is created. That someone's turned on that tap, and this regulator says, oh, I need to supply. And then your tank regulator says, oh, I need to supply. And that all kind of happens in like a real quick stage. If you need more volume of air that is just being stored in front of the valve while this is all at rest, if you need more volume of air to get that ball out at that velocity, then this reg is going to provide that volume. And how well this reg can flow, okay, will determine how much pressure it's needed to push out that volume of air that's being demanded by the system. The system says, look, I need X amount of volume, and to get this ball to 300 feet per second. So if we work on the volume, which we can in the piston, at the ability to be able to flow more with less pressure, then that's what we're doing here. So that's what's essentially happening. And so that's why this is a high flow reg, okay? But then there's a teeter-totter. a rag that is really flowing a lot may have a slower response at certain pressures. And but when it comes down to like a sidewinder, you know, is essentially exactly the same as this rag or as this rag for the most part. It functions exactly the same. It has a flat rag seat. It has a piston that's similar to this. It uses Belleville discs. The only difference is the piston is the difference. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of AKA rags. I think they're great. But there's a lot of people that have a classic autococker. They want to keep classic, and they want to use their regulator that works great. And I'm giving them kind of the option to tweak a little bit more. So anyway, so it's, or go buy a sidewinder too. You know, do what you want. Some people have built guns off the version 1, version 2 regs. And let's say they want to put a Di-Lazarus valve in it, or they want to put a fat rat. They want to kind of play that game with uber low pressure because they want it. That's what they want to do. And they have this match anode part that limits them. And so if I can make this rag flow better, then they don't have to necessarily, you know, ditch this for something that's not anode matched to the gun. They'll be able to use a product that they want to use, or they want it that's matched. So that's kind of the idea behind that. But anyway, that's the idea. If we can flow more the demand, then we can run this at a lower operating pressure. This at a lower operating pressure, that means that in theory, this is all theory, that you will be able to shoot deeper into your tank, which I really hate saying that because I've seen tank manufacturers that talk about the ability to shoot deeper in the tank. Well, if the theory is that if your tank is down to, let's say this is now flowing at 200 psi to get your gun to shoot 300 feet per second. And do I think it's capable? Yeah, I do, for this rag. And maybe even this rag. We'll do testing here pretty soon. Well, not in this video, but it's coming. And your tank is now dropped down to, you know, 250 psi. In theory, you should still, as long as you still have some volume in that tank, your gun should still be reasonably shooting at velocity. If the rag takes 300 psi and now you're at 200 or even 300 psi of tank pressure, then you're going to start seeing some drop-offs. So what does that equate to in shots? It could be 2 or 3 paintballs more than the other guy. And there's so many variables in there. So it's a theory-based thing. Because you have paint the barrel match, you have quality of paint, you have weight of paint, you have time, temperature, humidity, and all that good stuff that kind of comes into play on all that stuff. So, so anyway, that's kind of why I did this project. And so anyway, let's get back into getting this all rebuilt out. I know this is kind of a longer video. This guy is really in there tight. I'm trying to get this rag seat, and you just want to kind of pick it out from the edge, just kind of get there. It's okay to pick into this rag seat and just pull it all the way out. Oh, yeah, that one it's starting to get tacky. Sometimes you just got to dig them out. Now this is interesting. It's got a little hole down here. I have not seen, this is an older rag. An older, oh no, it's just a little machining nub. It should be flat in here. But this is an older style rag, because look how small, as an ergo rag, look how small that hole is on the top. But anyway, we're going to drop in on your rag seat. And the key with this is you want to make sure that this brass piece is nice and clean. There isn't any residue inside. So when you put this in here, it lays nice and flat. You want it as flat as possible. All right. So with that, we're going to go into assembling this. And I like to assemble from the bottom up. And what I do is I grab myself a little tool, I put the spring on, put the top hat with the top of the hat facing the spring. I put the number 8 O-ring. Get a little bit of, just a little bit of lube on that O-ring. Probably way too much. And I'm going to drop it down in there. And it should be, it's hard to see in there, but it should be down there. Alright, so try not to drop your spring. I'm going to drop that in there. Here we go. We're going to get a little bit of, don't need much, probably not enough there. A little bit of lube on this. I'm going to drop that down in there. I like putting a little lube on the threads, a little lube on the end. I'm going to drop that down in there. We're going to get our Allen key right here. There it goes. We're going to screw that down. And now it's good to look down in here. If I can get my flashlight. You want to make sure when you look down there, you want to make sure that O-ring, do it with the flashlight, that O-ring is not set off to the side. It's not off to the side in that hole. It's you can see that O-ring just kind of centered in there. You see just the edges of it, and it's hard to get this in here. You see that just you can see a lot of lube in there, but the O-ring's centered in there. Just want to make sure you don't want to go and clip that O-ring. Where did I put the? Oh, I pulled that O-ring off. Oh, I pulled it off of this one. That's where I go. Yeah, pulled it off the wrong one. All right. So while we're at it, we're going to put this ring in the bottom. There it goes. Yep. Just turn that in a little bit. We're going to take our piston. I want to make sure I get, let me go like this. I want to make sure I get the lube kind of all the way around it. There's some, make sure it just is filling all the little cracks in there, all where the O-ring resides. You can wipe off the top. I'm going to set that right here. Take whatever's left on my finger. I'm going to go inside, rub the inside, and now I'm going to stack my O-rings. So remember, the first one is cupped down, so it's cupped like that, and all the rest are going to be opposite of each other. So now this one's cupped like this, and this one's cupped like this, and we can continue. That, oops, I didn't do it right. That, cup like that, and then cup like that, and we're only putting 7 in here. Okay, we're going to save this one and save this, so you know. So if you end up wanting to move this to a resurrection, you can. Now, here's the neat thing. Is your macro line. It's like, well, what were you use the macro line for? We'll shove the macro line in the back of your regulator so you have something to hold it by. Could have did this earlier. Put a little bit of lube on this stem. Mash it around there. And just a little on that. Sometimes you can take each disc and kind of just rub between your kind of fingers that already have a whole bunch of lube on them. Not going to hurt anything. And now we're going to get this and we're going to shove this in here. And you don't want to force this. You don't want to damage this in. This is where you can potentially damage it. That's why you have this nice little hand device. And so you're going to, I'm not pushing hard. I'm going to move this around until I feel the hole. There it goes. It should slide right in. And to get your macro line out, just hold your piston in with something. Hold it in with the, this is an awkward piston and my fingers are greasy. There it goes. So the nice thing about that is I can use my macro line as a tool, and I can stuff it down that hole, just make sure it's clean. If it slips in and out, just squish the end of the macro line so it's a little oblong, and then it will bind in there. Or go from the other side with your little pusher tool that I included with you. You know, say this is a nice little tool to have, and you can push it out from the other side without damaging that. We're going to put that on, and then I'm going to bring over my tank real quick. So, all right, I'm back, and I have my air tank here. I have an air tank, a scuba tank that's got a yoke on it and then a regulator on it. And I am going to start off by screwing this piston in just a little bit. I don't want to screw it in on these workings where I'm smashing it down. I just want to bring it in a ways. I like putting a little bit of lube on this guy for the first time. It may leak here because this is an old macro line that I've used for testing. I should have screwed this on. I have a reg tester. Put a note in the comments if I should make these reg testers. Put that guy on there, and we're going to gas it up, and it's nice and low. You can even see, and all this is a little Schrader valve here. But anyway, we're going to, yeah, that's leaking right here. It's leaking in my fitting. And I'm going to go up to right at about 350, give or take. It's pretty good if I drop this down. Now, I really think that with this in here, it's going to work. I know it's going to work out just even on a factory War Games gun, which is what we're going to do the test on. I'm really flowing a lot here, and my tank is about down to 400 psi. So if I can zoom in. The key thing is look at consistency. I'm going to try to bring this down to 2. Let's try to bring this up to right at 3. Come on, get in there. There it goes. There we go. Okay, so that's right about 3. That reg is working excellent. Now, yes, could I put this on my dyno? Yeah, I need to pull the dyno out. I need to do that stuff. But this is, I like using a dry gauge for this. This gauge I don't trust on how accurate it is because it is a smaller gauge. But I know that it's, as a dry gauge, I can really show the speed or relative speed of something. If I can get something to sit here. So yeah, works good. Works really good. Let's zoom back out on that. So this reg is done and ready to go back on your gun. I do recommend after you take it off your marker is take it off the marker, set it onto a gauge, use the same gauge for setting. So whatever, if you're using this gauge, even if your gauge is inaccurate, who cares, right? Just set it to the same pressure. So mark what the pressure was when you took it off the gun, do the rebuild, put the new piston in, set it back at that pressure and see what your velocity is. So shoot the gun, check velocity. I don't care what the velocity is, 280, 285, whatever you have it set at. And then put this piston kit in, set the reg back at the same pressure, and report back to me if the velocity went up or down. I think that 9 times out of 10 the velocity is going to go up, and which is a positive. So if the velocity goes up, that means your reg is flowing better. And if anything, consistency should go up. Okay, this is, I don't remember how I have the spring stack in this one. Let me see if I go. I think I have the spring stack nested. So it's 8 springs and one's cupped with another one. Another good one. So that works. Let's put in this. I'm going to do each one of these. So this has, you can see in there, well, I can get some light in there for you. The blue piston, you can see it down in there. This one should have the red piston. You can see it down in there. Let's see how this one, how do you know what this one's set at? And all these rags were completely rebuilt. I'm pretty sure, if I remember. New rag seats, the whole 9 yards. Reception rag. Let's go and grab these two. So this one, you get the light. This is a standard War Games. These are adjustable. You have to unscrew them, and that's the adjuster. So let's see how this one works. Like I said, fully rebuilt. So I think this was set at 300. Works great. Oh, I got one more. This MacDev. I don't know where this MacDev's set at. Oh, MacDev. Let's get the flashlight so you can see. MacDev blue. Kind of see it down in there. I have no idea where this one's set at. I really like the MacDev regulators. I think they had some shortcomings on certain things, but they made a really good regulator. Works fine. Pull that off. Let's zoom out a little bit more. So with that, works, and these guys don't have parts in them. Now you have on the War Games regulators, you have a whole bunch of different styles. There's this style, non-adjustable. They came out with a later version on the 2K3s, I think it was, that had, it's a different shape, it's more wavy, but it's essentially you have to take the cap off on the bottom to adjust it. Exactly the same. You have, this is an older version of the, because the top, this is a really older version. This is probably what came with the STOs, the original STOs. But anyway, works with that. So this is the Ergo style. This is the Black Magic. There's the ones that came on the Oracles, which look similar to this, but were larger diameter. Works with those, and they had a straight fitting. Works with the Carnivore rags. I'm sure works with the SR rags if they're still around. Any of the War Games rags, the blue piston works well with. Any of the Empire rags that were on the Empire Sniper or the Empire Resurrection, it's the blue fitting. The MacDev, and it's the MacDev that have the adjuster on the bottom and the feed neck port off. It's this version, which works perfectly with those. Inception Designs, you got to go to the red one, and they have version 1, 2, and 3, maybe even 3.5. I don't know, but I know with 1 and 2 it works. And I know with 3 it will work fine too. I recommend on 1 and 2 that you replace the bevel disc with what comes in the kit. You try both on the version 3s and see what your best results are, what you like, and we can go from there. But that's it. That's the Fire Pistons setup. Get them while you can. I don't know if I'm going to do another run of these. I may or may not. All right. Docfire out.